Hello and welcome to week 6 where we are going to cover chapter 4. In this video I'm going to provide a brief and very high-level overview of chapter 6. Chapter 6 is about organizational structure and management systems. And the premise of this chapter is that strategy implementation really goes beyond operational strategy decisions, and the way in which an organization is organized has an impact on its strategy as well. So this chapter talks a lot about the annual planning strategy cycle, which you see kind of a rough flow chart of how that might work in an organization here on this slide. Most organizations, at least large organizations, have an annual strategy planning cycle. Some of you might have even been involved in this process within your organization. Typically organizations are planning for the next 3 to 5 years, and the process involves a combination of top-down and bottom-up approaches, really dependent upon the size of the organization and its organizational structure. Typical corporate guidelines and initiatives are set at the top, and then the business units work on individual business plans. That's kind of a traditional way that corporate planning strategy works. Projects are actually also identified as part of the business plan that those business units might put together. And I wanted, as a side note, I just wanted to talk a little bit about the business plan because many times people do get business plan and business case confused. So as a side note, your final project in this class is to create a business case, not a business plan, and people do often confuse those two. Just as a brief summary and a high level, I would say that a business case is developed for a specific action or project. So think of a business case for a project, and a business plan is usually geared towards the organization as a whole, or maybe a specific product line. A business case focuses on the ROI, the payback, the net present value. So those are things typically associated with a very specific project. And a business plan focuses on higher level things like the revenue and the profit of the organization. Anyway, those things all evolve into the overall corporate plan. And then typically the capital budgets are set based on those business plans for the overall corporation. The second part, or the middle part of this chapter, talks about organizational structure. And it talks about two concepts called cooperation and coordination as it relates to organizational structure. And this slide outlines those at a high level. So the cooperation, organizational cooperation, really means aligning the interest of individuals that have divergent goals. So on your slide here it says employees' goals not equal to owners' goals. So think of managers versus stakeholders. Are the managers of the company incented to maximize shareholder wealth? Or sometimes they might be too incented. Think of Enron. And then there's also departmental differences. So think of a sales and a marketing department. And sometimes, those two organizations or departments may not have the same goals, as well as if you compare those to production and finance, they all might have different goals. Now, when you talk about the need for coordination, coordination is about how to harmonize their activities. In other words, team coordination can provide a synergy that individuals don't have alone. So that's pretty obvious, right? If you get a group of people together, many times they can accomplish something that one person can't accomplish individually. And then the last part of this chapter focuses on organizational design. It's a much debated topic on what the perfect organizational design is. There's not a perfect design. It really depends on the strategy the technology involved with that company, and also what the external environment looks like. The book provides an example of Google versus McDonald's, and they are both similar in size and similar in revenue, but their organizational structures are very different. McDonald's is very traditional, bureaucratic, highly structured with formal systems, and Google is informal with horizontal communication across the company. So anyway, that's an example. The book goes into some details about the types of organizational structure. It talks about functional, multidivisional, and matrix. I'm not going to go into those. I think it does a good example of laying those out. And then at the summary of the chapter, it talks about major trends that we've seen in the last few decades regarding organizational structures and how organizations have tried different things, essentially to become more profitable, to become more efficient at what they're doing. I would say, just to summarize, to take this back to a project selection and scope perspective, it's important for a project manager to understand the different types of organizational structures and why an organization is structured the way that it is, because this can help you navigate the organization as you're managing a project, and also understand potentially why a particular project was selected, because depending on the way the organization is structured, that might have a bearing on the way that projects are selected and why they're selected. All right, and that summarizes Chapter 6.